In this topic, we're going to discuss the movement of water up the stem and across the leaf. So by the end of this topic, you should be able to answer the questions: how does water move up the xylem? What is the cohesion-tension theory, and what is the evidence for this theory? What are criticisms of this theory? How does water move from xylem to leaf cells, from the leaf cells into the air spaces, and then from the air spaces through the stomata? And how do stomata open and close? Just to recap, water is taken up by the root hair cells via osmosis. It moves across the root cortex to the xylem. Then it moves up the xylem, which we're going to look at today. From the xylem to the leaf cells, then it evaporates from the mesophyll cells into the air spaces. And it moves out of the stomata via a process called transpiration. So it's a good idea to watch the video on the structure and function of xylem before you continue with this topic. Now, a number of factors are jointly responsible for the movement of water up the xylem from the roots to the leaves. These include cohesion, capillarity, adhesion, and root pressure. The main mechanism by which water moves up the xylem is known as the cohesion-tension theory. So water evaporates from leaves as a result of transpiration. So this sets up tension at the top of the plant. So it's got a low hydrostatic pressure. The water molecules form hydrogen bonds between one another, and this is called cohesion. The water forms a continuous, unbroken path across the mesophyll cells and down the xylem. As water evaporates from the mesophyll cells in the leaf into the substomatal airspace, more molecules of water are drawn up behind it as a result of cohesion. So water is hence pulled up the xylem as a result of transpiration. So this is called the transpiration pull. The transpiration pull puts the xylem under tension, hence the name cohesion-tension theory. So adhesion is the force of attraction between unlike molecules. The water molecules adhere to the xylem vessels and move upwards. So the xylem vessels are small to increase the surface area of water in contact with the wall. So evidence for the cohesion-tension theory is that a change occurs in the diameter of trees according to the rate of transpiration. So during the day, when transpiration is at its greatest, there's more tension in the xylem, so the trunk of the diameter will shrink. At night, when transpiration is at its lowest, there's less tension in the xylem, so the diameter of the trunk increases. And when a xylem vessel is broken, water does not leak out, which would be the case if it was under pressure, but rather air is pulled in, which is consistent with it being under tension. A few criticisms of the cohesion-tension theory is that breaks in the water column should halt the flow of water. The vessel will fill with air and water vapor, which is called cavitation. However, the flow is not interrupted. This could possibly be because water bypasses the break, moving horizontally via pits and parenchyma cells. Now that we've discussed how water moves up the xylem, let's have a look at how water moves from the xylem into the leaf cells. So water moves out of the xylem vessels via pits because of the water potential gradient between the xylem and the mesophyll cells. So it moves from a high water potential to a low water potential. And it moves via the apoplast and symplast pathways. As it moves from one cell to the next, it creates a water potential gradient. Then as the water moves out of the xylem, this lowers the hydrostatic pressure at the top of the xylem, which will draw more water up from the roots. Water then evaporates from the mesophyll cells into the air spaces, as you can see here. So it evaporates from the walls of the mesophyll cells into the substomatal air spaces, and this saturates the air in the air spaces of the leaf. The water will then move out of the stomata by transpiration, which is the last point. So it moves out of the leaf through the stomata by diffusion, and the rate of transpiration depends on the water gradient between the air spaces and the external atmospheric air. So we'll discuss this in more detail in the topic transpiration. Okay, let's quickly look at stomata. So the function of stomata is to allow carbon dioxide into the leaf for photosynthesis. So here you can see stomata surrounded by guard cells. Notice how the inner wall of the guard cell is thickened. This aids in the opening and closing of the stomata. So how do stomata open and close? Well, what happens is hydrogen ions are actively pumped out of the guard cell. The potassium ion channels then open, and potassium diffuses down the electrochemical gradient into the guard cell. So the water potential is lowered in the guard cell, and water moves by osmosis into the guard cell. So this makes the cells turgid. The thicker inner wall of the guard cell stretches so that the cell curves. And because you've got two guard cells there, when they curve, this will open up the stomata or stoma. The dorsal wall is more flexible, so it can expand more and bend. So in summary, we've looked at how water moves up the xylem, the cohesion-tension theory, evidence for this theory and criticisms of this theory, how water moves from the xylem to the leaf cells, from the leaf cells into the air spaces, and then from the air spaces through the stomata. And then we also looked at the mechanism of how the guard cells become turgid to allow for the stomata to open. And that concludes our lesson. The end.